Welcome back to another video. If you're new, my name is Leah, and yesterday I went ahead and got a bunch of meal prep done. I'm gonna share that with you because we are starting a low spend budget challenge month here in August. I'm going to be heading out to the grocery store and sharing that haul with you on Tuesday. But in this video, I'm sharing with you all of the little things that I got ready for our family for breakfast and bread. I am so excited about today's video. I am preparing things for breakfast as well as bread because we need bread. The kids need sandwiches, they need toast, we just need bread. So today I'm going to be sharing with you two different bread recipes, one using yeast, one not using yeast. I'm also going to be sharing with you my bagel recipe. So who doesn't like bagels? If you don't like bagels, it's probably because you've never had New York style bagels. So let me share with you my recipe for that, how I make them. I actually like to do them little small bite-sized pieces, so that way you don't have to have an entire bagel, but the recipe works for that as well. If you wanna have a whole piece that you can slice, put it into your toaster, that works as well. Stick around, we're gonna be sharing that with you, as well as a really interesting muffin recipe. I'm doing some breakfast cookies. I've had coffee. Can you tell? I've had coffee. All right, let's go ahead and get cooking. So here are all of the ingredients that I'm going to be using today. For the first recipe, I'm going to be making those New York style bagels. So I just need some flour. You can use bread flour or all-purpose. It doesn't matter. In my opinion, I've used both. Kosher salt, really important. And then of course you're going to need yeast and then also water. I will have the recipe all in the description box for you. But you're going to do 1 packet of yeast or 2 teaspoons of yeast with 1 1/4 cup of warm water, just warm to touch. Make sure it's not hot so it doesn't kill the yeast. And then we're also going to give it some sugar, something to feed on. Then we're gonna add in 3 1/2 cups of flour. Now I am using my KitchenAid stand mixer with the dough hook. You can also use a bread machine and just let it knead the dough for you, which I've done so many times. But I'm gonna be using my bread maker for some other loaf bread that uses yeast in case our no yeast bread doesn't turn out. So once I've got that going, I'm gonna add my salt. You just need 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. You can see here, everything is combining really well. We're gonna let this knead for about 8 minutes and it's gonna start getting really elastic. Next, we're going to do our bread with yeast, since that takes time as well for it to rise. We're gonna add 1 1/2 cups of warm water and 2 teaspoons of yeast. So this is the yeast I'm using today. So 2 teaspoons. Again, you can do this in a stand mixer like I'm doing the bagel dough, but I don't have 2 stands and I want to get all of this done at once. So I'm going to utilize my bread maker to do the kneading for me. So we've got our water in there, our yeast, and then we're going to also add some sugar. We're going to add in 3 cups of flour, the same flour we used earlier, just all-purpose is fine. If you have bread flour, you can use that. Just don't use self-rising. Then we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt, and you can use regular salt or kosher salt. I'm gonna just do my dough setting and let it knead for me. And then here's our bagel dough. You can see it's starting to get stretchy. So we're just gonna let that rise. We're gonna cover it and let it rise for about an hour. Now, while those things are working, we're going to move on to our no yeast bread dough. And I decided to use my buttermilk, powdered buttermilk, since I don't use it very often. I'm gonna reconstitute that. And here is the recipe that I'm following. I will leave it linked down below for you from the original person that I got it from. So I have my oven preheating to 430, like it says. And then I'm going to make my milk. I need a total of 2 1/4 cups of milk. So I'm gonna follow the directions on here. It also says that you can use water and oil or water and butter if you don't have milk, but you can use any kind of milk, whether it's buttermilk, whole milk, fat-free milk. For 1 cup of buttermilk, I need 4 tablespoons. So I need 5. I need 5 tablespoons of this and 1 1/4 cup of water. Remembering to clean as we go. One ingredient that we no longer need. I've got my buttermilk powder. Just added my warm water since I need warm milk. Then I won't have to reheat this in the microwave. I'm just already heating it with the water I'm using. Just get that mixed nicely. And then I'm gonna remeasure just to make sure that it made exactly how much I need. Got that set aside. Next, I'm gonna move on to my dry ingredients. I need 4 cups of flour, 8 teaspoons of baking powder, gosh, I don't have enough. I don't have enough baking powder. I didn't realize I was running this low. Oh no. All right, we are gonna roll with the punches. I'm going to go with a recipe that uses baking soda and egg instead of baking powder. So I just added enough buttermilk powder and some water to make enough milk, since it's requiring 1 3/4 cup of buttermilk, and the recipe calls for 3.5 cups of flour instead of 4. So I'm going to take out a 1/2 cup of flour that we just measured. So now we're going to move on to this new baking soda or Irish soda bread. We're going to do a teaspoon of kosher salt and a teaspoon of baking soda. All right. I do want to try the baking powder bread, so I will include that in a video next time. I'm really excited about that. I wish I could have done it today. So I'm just going to mix those ingredients together. Now this recipe that I pulled up calls for butter. I'm just gonna still use oil like the last recipe called for. I don't really want to melt butter for this, but if you don't have oil, you can just use 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So I put a little well in here just to give me room to scramble my egg. Pour in my buttermilk and 1 egg. Okay. I'm going to beat that up. And just when the egg yolk is broken up, I'm then going to switch over to my spatula to combine all of this wet ingredient. Pull you closer for you to see. So this is my first time making bread without yeast. Actually, the first time I made bread with yeast, I was really intimidated. I put it off for a very long time. I thought it was going to be much harder than it was. But there are so many recipes and videos, tutorials, blogs that just make it so easy for you to follow along. So if you've been intimidated to try making bread or anything with yeast, whether it's cinnamon rolls, bagels, anything like that, I definitely recommend just bite the bullet, try it. It's not as hard as you think. So this is actually not quite as sticky as I thought it was going to be. If you do the baking powder bread, that one is supposed to be very sticky. Next, I'm going to use my parchment paper. You could just grease the pan, but this is going to make it easy to lift the bread right out of the pan. Now, I just got my hand wet so that I could press this down, try to make it level, fill in the corners as best as I could. I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes. Guess what I forgot to do? Add the oil. I can't believe I did this. I mean, I can believe I did this. I've been distracted with my kids all morning, but oh my gosh, still. I'm gonna pop this down in here. Next, we're gonna move on to our no-bake breakfast cookies. You're just gonna need oats, peanut butter, and maple syrup. You can also add in other things like nuts, chocolate chips, sprinkles. I would say sprinkles would be a good idea. So let's start with our peanut butter. I'm actually gonna reconstitute some of this. I'm running low on it, and I just wanna use it up before it goes bad. It still smells pretty good. So I need 1 cup of peanut butter. And remember, I'm gonna have the recipes completely listed for you down in the description box. I love to use this powdered peanut butter to make little peanut butter balls for my daughter. And then I'm gonna add cold water to this. So if you're interested in those little peanut butter balls, they taste like the filling of a peanut butter cracker cookie, those little sandwiches that you eat. And the reason why I came up with this recipe for her is because she loves those little peanut butter crackers just for the filling. And I'm like, that's a waste. So I can make the filling. Surely I can figure out a way to make the filling And I didn't want to do, you know, like when you make Buckeyes or whatever, you use peanut butter and powdered sugar, and it makes this kind of consistency, but I didn't want her to just be eating peanut butter and sugar. So I was like, there's gotta be a way to make these for her. So this is the consistency that I make the peanut butter from the peanut butter powder. You can make the balls as small or as big as you want. She goes nuts for these. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a couple of these for her, the rest of the water that I need for our recipe. The nice thing about using peanut butter powder is it is less fat. I don't think it's as much flavor because fat equals flavor. But that is the nice thing about using the powder. Okay. I need 1/3 cup of maple syrup. Just gonna give that a nice mix. You could add some vanilla extract to this or some kind of flavoring as well. I have this really yummy cake batter flavoring, and I will do this in pancakes, all kinds of things. Oh, it smells so good. It tastes really good. So I'm just gonna add about a teaspoon of that in here, just to give it more of a flavor than just the peanut butter. Peanut butter is a very strong flavor. Now, because I'm using the dehydrated peanut butter, I don't think it's gonna be as strong of a peanut butter flavor as if I were to use like Jif or, you know, regular creamy store peanut butter. It's that cake batter flavoring. It smells so good. You can use cashew butter, you can use almond butter, you can use sunflower butter if you are a nut-free home. We were for a while with my nephew. He was listed a whole bunch of things he was allergic to, and that was really interesting, trying to find things that he could eat. And thank God he has just seemed to outgrow those allergies. Now I'm gonna do 2 cups of my oats. Maybe you don't feel like eating breakfast, or you're more of a carb person, you don't really like to have bacon and eggs. This would be a good way to start out your day with a little bit of protein. So now I have my pan lined. You can use parchment paper or a silicone mat, and we're just going to portion out little cookies. This makes about 12 cookies, depending on how large of a scoop you use. And then you can just press them down to whatever shape you want them to be. If you want them to be a big mound, then that's fine. I think they'll be easier to eat if you flatten them out a little bit. But the scoop is nice to be able to measure and try to have the same size, especially if you're trying to track how many calories you're eating or whatever. Make sure they're even. And it said to put these in the fridge. I'm going to clean up my mess, get some stuff put away. And now I'm going to move on to our blueberry muffins. I'm trying a new recipe. It's not even a recipe I've seen, but I'm gonna hack a recipe using a cake mix. So have you all ever noticed that when you go to the grocery store bakery and you get their blueberry muffins or their banana nut muffins or whatever, they are so airy and delicious. And no matter how many recipes you try, you just can't replicate it. Well, I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like I just can't replicate that same consistency or texture of the grocery store bakery muffins. Now, don't get me wrong. Regular banana nut muffins, they're delicious, but the consistency is not the same as a grocery store. And I have a feeling It's because they use cake. Muffins are just bald cupcakes, right? So it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But what I'm gonna try is just use a cake mix as directed, follow the directions on here with the oil, the water, the eggs, and add in my blueberries. And I'm gonna make muffins that way and see how they turn out, okay? All right, we've still got 7 minutes left on our bread that's in the oven. I'm gonna whip this up and we should be right on track time-wise to get these into the oven when the bread comes out. So I'm gonna pour in my mix, half a cup of oil, just a little bit extra to make them nice and moist. Need 1 cup of water, 3 eggs. Of course, you could make this homemade from scratch with your own cake flour, which by the way, if you didn't know, cake flour is just flour and cornstarch. Makes it nice and airy, less gluten. But you can make your own from scratch if you want. But I'm just gonna go the easy route and use a box cake mix. Super easy, super fast, and not expensive either. I mean, you can get these on sale for less than $1 quite often. I think the Walmart Great Value brand is usually right at 98 cents. For this flavor, I'm doing blueberry. So I've got a little over a cup of blueberries in here. Let me tell you, I'll tell you exactly how many blueberries I'm doing. For science purposes, we've got half a cup, whole cup. Okay, just about 1.5 cups, okay? And now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour to help coat the blueberries, keep them from leaking all into the batter. I think this is supposed to help keep them from sinking to the bottom of the muffins as well. Just kind of help it stick to the batter and not sink. I don't know. We shall see. I do smell the bread in the oven. It says we've got 3 minutes left. So I'm gonna check on that in just a second, which sounds like it's gonna be perfect timing, honestly. And then I've just got a little bit of extra flour. I'm gonna mix this in. Looks so pretty. Okay, you could like grease and flour these pans if you wanted to do that, but I'm going to just keep it really simple and use cupcake liners, muffin liners. The oven just told me we got 1 minute left. Can we do this? All right, I mean, it looks like bread. It feels like bread. So we're gonna go ahead and give this some time before we slice it. It works out really well when you have the parchment paper. You can just lift it right out. Finished filling our muffin cups. So I filled them to the top. I am nervous. I feel like they're gonna overflow. But I'm gonna try this the same way that I did muffins and they turned out amazing. But now we're just going to sprinkle the tops with that really good coarse turbinado sugar. Sugar in the raw, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna get these into the oven at 425 for about 9 minutes. You want to try one?
Yeah. Ooh.
Okay. All right, so they've been rising. I don't know. We're gonna get them back in for 15 more minutes remaining. So this is what our bagel dough looks like after an hour. See, it's nice and stretchy. We're gonna put on some water to boil. That's the key to the bagels. You have to boil them. I know I need to get a Brillo pad and scrub that extra good. It's kind of stained. But with bagels, you just use regular water. With pretzels, you would use baking soda. So just regular water, get this to a nice boil, and then turn it down to low. So the nice thing about this dough is that it lasts really well in the fridge for a few days. So I'm just going to use some of it for this morning, and then the other part I'm having as prepped dough in my freezer. It doesn't take very long to boil and bake the bagels, so I can do this the morning of and have fresh bagels. You could put it in a sealed container, and then just keep in mind this is going to expand in your fridge. So I'm just going to divide out what I want. I'm trying to make them a little more equal. And then if you want them to be stuffed with cream cheese, then you're going to flatten them out like this. If you don't want them stuffed and you just want to dip them or not have cream cheese at all, then you just roll it into a ball until it's nice and smooth. So I like to push the dough down like this. Like that. It goes into itself like that. And it helps create a nice smooth texture. And then I like to pinch it and roll. You kind of cup your hand and roll. Makes a nice smooth texture. But the nice thing is these do not have to be perfect at all, so don't stress about that. So we're just gonna flatten these out, get them ready like an assembly line to just stuff with the cream cheese. Okay, now I like to use 1 teaspoon of cream cheese in each of these bites. So just lay that in there. And this is where the assembly line to me comes in handy. Once I start rolling the dough, I'm gonna want my hands to be clean. So I'm not gonna want cream cheese all over my hands. Now, I line my baking sheet with the parchment paper. You can use a silicone mat if you want. Then we're going to fold the edges all in like a little dumpling. Pinch, seal, close, 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 like that. And then you just roll it up, okay? And that's it. So we're gonna do that with all of these here. And if you start getting too much cream cheese on your hand, just go ahead and wash it. Wash your hands and then get back to it. Here the water is starting to come to a boil. We've got 3 minutes left on our blueberry muffins, so we're doing really good on timing. We started about 8:30 this morning and it's almost 10 o'clock. So we'll be done less than 2 hours. So we've got all of our little bagel bites. All right, I'm gonna take these out now. It says we've got 2 minutes left, but these look perfect. They're still a little soft. I think they all look really good. A couple of them had a burnt edge. Technically, I wanted to have these in the oven for about 9 minutes at 425 and then drop it down to 375 for the last 15 minutes. And when I checked on them at the 9-minute mark, I set my timer, but I didn't lower the oven. So that may have made a difference because they were so hot. I don't know. To our boiling water, we're going to add all of our little bagel bites. If you have a smaller batch like this, go ahead and drop them all in. You just want to make sure that you don't have so many in that you can't get them back out quick enough. So I would recommend doing about 10 at a time. That way you can scoop them out. You're going to have them in there for about 20 seconds. And then I just dropped down my heat on my oven down to 400. So now we're going to scoop these out into our parchment paper pan. It's not like you have to do them for exactly 20 seconds, but boiling them like this is going to give them that nice chewy texture. Now what I do instead of just sprinkling these onto the bagels is while your bagel is still wet from being boiled, you just dip it into the seasoning of your choice and it keeps it from having a bunch of extra seasonings all over the pan. It's so easy that way. Now everything bagel is super popular. Salt is one of my all-time favorites. You can put a little bit in your hand and dip the bagel in that way too. I was raised in Michigan and we have a lot of Jewish community and cultures all around us. And one of the most popular treats that we had in Sunday school, instead of little donut balls, we loved when the teachers would bring in bagels. Oh my word, I remember it was such a treat, and everyone's favorite was salt. And I remember in elementary school, we would have Bagel Tuesdays, and the bagel cart would come through from Big Apple Bagel or some local bagel shop that they had, and everyone would get to buy a bagel for, I think it was like 50 cents. So I always got a salt bagel.
Now we're just going to put these into the oven for about 20 minutes until they're nice and golden underneath.
So my bread maker just beeped at me, said that the rise, everything is complete on that bread. You can see it's a really soft dough. So what I'm gonna do is just flour my surface just a little bit, grab my dough, scraping all the sides as I go. Okay. I'm just going to stretch it a little bit. Okay. Flip it. And I want to roll it. And then tuck the edges under like that. And then put this into my loaf pan. And now I'm gonna let this rise for another 30 minutes. Just try one first. Okay, go ahead.
I want to try.
Oh, you want to try that?
Yes.
All right, what do you think about that cookie?
7, 6.
I like it and I don't like it.
Okay. This is definitely more like the grocery store consistency of a muffin. These are one of my all-time favorite things. I think you're really going to enjoy them. And knowing that they're not really difficult, you should definitely give them a try. You are going to be so impressed, and so will all your guests. The last thing on our agenda is just to get our bread that has yeast into the oven. It definitely feels way different than the bread that used soda, instead of yeast. So we're gonna put that in there for about 30 minutes. So here's the bread. I sliced it. I asked Weston what he thought about the bread, and he said it was okay. It's not his favorite. I mean, it's definitely different than having a loaf of bread from the store. So it definitely has a different texture, of course. I mean, that's given with any kind of homemade bread that you have. It's not gonna be that super soft, processed bread, you know, that you get in a bag. Tastes like bread. But as far as the flavor, I don't know, it doesn't have a whole lot of flavor. Something about it has like a different smell. Like, it doesn't smell bad, but it doesn't really smell like bread either. I guess because there's no yeast. I'm used to smelling yeast bread. It's kind of like a cracker taste. Like when you have, I guess, soda crackers, really. So this is the bread that has the yeast in it. It's easier to slice. It's not as crumbly. So here, I'll show you the difference side by side in these two. So but here you can see the inside. This one is heavier. This one's a little lighter. And same thing with how it eats. It's just, this is a softer bread and this is definitely a heavier bread. To get a thin piece, it just kind of broke. So I would have to slice it thicker to keep it from crumbling. So this is definitely gonna be the bread to use in the toaster. We'll be able to do that easier. The kids had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with this today and they didn't complain about it. I say the kids did. Weston ate his entire one. Maylin didn't eat it, but that's pretty normal for her. She loves bananas and didn't eat her banana either, so she just wasn't very hungry today, I guess. But with our meal prep, I got the cookies here, which need to go into the fridge. And then I've got muffins here, so that'll be good for a couple of days. I've got my bagel dough in the fridge for the next couple of days. And then I have our 2 loaves of bread.
So hopefully you had fun learning some new recipes and techniques. And of course, until the next video, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments.